Did you trip and fall into HR? That's how I got into HR. I didn't start off that way. I didn't ever think that would be my career. I didn't go to school and major in business or even human resources. I majored in theater. And I worked before I started in HR. I worked in consulting, I worked in law firms, I worked in real estate. Um, and some of those companies were small, some of those companies were global. And I learned a great deal about business from those experiences and developed my business acumen and my financial literacy and financial acumen um, doing the work that I did. So when I started at a small but global manufacturing operation, I I started doing the HR function. It was not a very big company, had less than 50 people, and it was probably about 50% of my responsibility. So I did what I always do. I set out to learn HR. Um, and at that time, I was focused a lot on the transactional nature, trying to keep the people happy, keep the, recruit, be the fun police, be whatever it was that um, HR is supposed to do at small organizations. And a lot of the people that I worked with did not have a good view of HR. They'd worked at large manufacturing companies with really, really rigid policies. The HR people were either incompetent or sometimes downright mean um, from their perspective. Um, so that was my original exposure to HR manufacturing or manufacturing HR. Um, but I continued to grow. The department continued to grow, and eventually became my full time job. And I eventually grew to love the profession. But still, I was mired in a lot of that transactional, non value added work that we do in HR. We deal with the people that come in crying to our office. We deal with the benefits. We deal with payroll. We deal with the jobs nobody else wants to do. We plan the company picnic and the Christmas party and the pizza parties and make sure that we have cupcakes or birthday cakes once a month for the employee and work on and sit on an employee recognition team. Um, but I didn't find myself doing really any value added work. It was all fluffy stuff, and I was considered a cost center. Within the organization. I did not drive business, I did not drive sales, or at least there was no perception that that's what I did. So it took me a long time to get a seat at the table, and that really didn't happen until my focus shifted. Um, During a conversation with one of my managers, he was, and if you ask him, it was not his finest moment. Um, he was frustrated by a lot of the reactivity that became a part of my day to day. A manager would mess something up and I'd run in and clean it up. There would be no plan as to what the recruiting strategy was. I would simply be given, here, you need to recruit this, or let me change this. There was no I had no input. I had no control over the hiring process, the recruiting process. I did have some control of the job descriptions. Um, the managers were not as well trained as they should have been on how to deal with employee issues. So that became a bulk of my day, was dealing with the messes. And my manager looked at me and he said, Dara, I need you to put the mop down. I need you to get the mop out of your hands. And I thought about that for a long time as to what that actually meant. And as I said, he claims to this day it was not his finest moment, but it was the change in how I started to look at HR and be more proactive about the initiatives I was doing, the where I thought the focus should be as far as how to better position us for recruiting, how to build our employer brand. how to grow the business and become an employer of choice in our community, which was a large manufacturing community in Indiana and very, very competitive. It still remains competitive to this day. And how do you separate yourself from large employers with who have good employee value, um, or have a good employee value proposition? How do you, as a small to mid-sized employer, separate yourself and and recruit good talent to your organization? Um, and that's where a lot of the work that I started doing with employer brand came from that conversation to get the mop out of my hand. So, how can you, if you find yourself, if this resonates with you and you find yourself cleaning up messes, doing the work that nobody else wants to do in your organization, how do you make that change to become more strategic, to start really adding value to your organization? Well, let's go take a look at one of your processes. And I'm going to pick benefits because that seems to fall under HR quite a bit. What can you do to streamline the process, uh, to show the value that benefits that your benefit program has for your employees? Some of that is education. Some of that is crafting a really, really great open enrollment meetings, making them advertising them, make sure people show up, make sure that the presentation is not just a dry recitation of the benefits. Explain to them why enrolling in your insurance program is adds value to their life. Explain that to them. Create a infrastructure that allows them to go online and choose their benefits. Um, Work on connecting the enrollments directly, like do it, work on a carrier connection if you have that available. Work on a more streamlined process to get people enrolled in the benefits. Make sure that you are reaching out to your employees about when they can enroll and being available to answer any questions for them. And how can you create space and a schedule so that there is consistency? People trust you as an HR provider within the organization to deliver a service to them that has value. Focus on how you can do that. How can you create bandwidth in your day so that you are not just cleaning up messes? Because employees that enroll in benefits and use those benefits typically are healthier and have more and are present at work. They're not dealing with the financial stress of choosing a wrong plan, and are now having to try to figure out how to pay for medical bills. Um, those are things that can keep people connected to the work that they're doing rather than worrying about things outside of um, their daily work life. Those are just some ramblings, some musings about something that you could do to create value within the HR function. Pick a path, pick a process. There is something that you can reduce the friction on. Empower people, empower the employees within your organization to use the HR process that doesn't require you to hold their hand every single step of the way. They don't want that. You don't want that. And by not running around and cleaning up the messes for them, you reposition yourself as a HR provider, HR professional, HR practitioner that can add value to the organization, either by um, creating or focusing on initiatives that can reduce the cost of the um, insurance offerings, increase usage of the insurance, reduce the amount of risk simply by getting people into their provider for wellness checks that reduce the risk to your insurance plan. Those are all things that you can do to help the business, to drive the business forward, and to maybe reduce a cost. Um, there's other things that you can do, just not reducing cost, but adding value, being able to demonstrate how that affects their pay, how that affects total comp can go a long way with recruiting, retaining employees, making sure they understand the value that they are receiving from the employer. Once again, pick a path, pick a process. There's something in your organization that you can take a lead on, that you can control, and find a way to understand how it can reduce a cost, add value, or drive results within your organization. And then learn to tell the story about what you're doing and involve more people in your project. By doing these actions to demonstrate that you can bring value to an organization, that you can be a trustworthy provider of HR services, will enhance your ability to do strategic work in the organization and get that seat at the table and drive the HR function in a direction that it should be going, rather than reacting to everything that lands on your desk.